thought we had a quorum. Anybody interested in being the council? All right, ready to rock. The hearing is called to order. This is a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 180-162, 180-163, 180-164, and resolution number 180-185. Mr. Stitt, please read the titles of the bills and resolution.
Bill number 180-162, an ordinance to adopt the capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2019 through 2024 inclusive. Bill number 180-163, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2019 capital budget. Bill number 180-164, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2019. Resolution number 180-185, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2019 through 2023 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2018, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this Council, approved by the Mayor on January 3, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Stitt. Today, we will continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2019, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal 2019 through fiscal 2024. Today, we will hear testimony from the following departments: SEPTA, Community College, Fleet Management, and the Auditing Department, also known as the City Controller. The first person to testify today, Mr. Sid, is
Mr. Newpol, Jeff Newpol.
Good morning.
Good morning, Council President Clark and members of City Council. My name is Jeff Kneppel, and I'm honored to come before you today as the General Manager for the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. I am joined by SEPTA Philadelphia Board members Michael Carroll, Deputy Managing Director, Office of Transportation and Infrastructure Systems, and Beverly Coleman, Assistant Vice President for Community Relations and Economic Development at Temple University. SEPTA is pleased to submit testimony supporting the authority's $84.8 million fiscal year 2019 operating budget request. I am grateful for the opportunity to meet quarterly with Chairman Johnson and brief him on our activities and priorities, and I am pleased to provide the entire Council with an overview of SEPTA initiatives and milestones achieved during the past year. I believe you have copies of my complete testimony, and if you agree, I would like to summarize its content and get right to any questions you may have. Members of my staff are also with me today to help provide any additional information requested.
Oh man, you just moved ahead to one other department head to get the best and shortest testimony this budget season. You are now first. You bumped them out of first place.
I know, and they wrote too much, but it's been a busy year.
All right.
I'll read fast. The city operating subsidy enables SEPTA to meet its legislatively mandated requirement to secure local matching funds to match state operating subsidy dollars of approximately $565 million. For the authority's capital budget, the city's $4.97 million contribution will support a capital program this year of approximately $750 million. This will enable SEPTA to invest in critical infrastructure in Philadelphia and to advance priority projects, including the reconstruction of 15th Street and City Hall stations, Center City concourse improvements, Broad Street and Market Frankfurt Line station accessibility projects at 30th Street Station, 5th Street Independence Hall, Susquehanna Dauphin, and Tasker Morris. Regional rail station accessibility projects at Winfield and Lawndale, and the expansion of the Wissahickon Transportation Center. Council's continued support to allocate operating and capital funds in the city's budget is sincerely appreciated. SEPTA is working hard to build the future and to support Philadelphia's growth and opportunities. SEPTA is an enthusiastic partner with the city in so many initiatives, from vital efforts to rethink traffic patterns and pedestrian safety to litter reduction, not to mention transporting hundreds of thousands of fans to the Eagles Championship Parade. We are proud of these partnerships and the successful outcomes that help make this city a better place to live, work, and visit. SEPTA's award-winning sustainability program is also built on a strong partnership with the city, including as a member of the Zero Waste and Litter Committee that spearheaded the successful signature spring cleanup earlier this month in Southwest Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Water Department and SEPTA are working together to pursue stormwater management opportunities on and around SEPTA facilities throughout the city, starting at SEPTA's Southern Bus District. Recently, staff also initiated a partnership with the Philadelphia Energy Authority and Office of Sustainability to plan the next generation of energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. Using an innovative funding approach, SEPTA is working to reduce energy consumption, costs, and emissions without any taxpayer subsidy. SEPTA's first solar project, a 3.1 megawatt array on 4 bus garage roofs throughout the city, will be online next year, the second largest solar project ever in Philadelphia. There is one partnership that stands out to me, and this year it is the Hub of Hope. In a very short time, and with the help of Council President Clark, Councilwoman Blackwell, and members of Council, we identified and transformed an unused former Philadelphia Police Department Transit Division facility into an 11,000 square foot engagement center, providing vital services and care to our city's homeless individuals. The Hub of Hope averages 325 to 375 daily visitors. Since its opening in January, 1,500 individuals have received services and 414 placements have been made. Medical visits and meal services are now getting underway. We applaud this important work, especially the efforts of the city's Office of Homeless Services and Sister Mary Scullion and the staff of Project Home. They have been wonderful partners. In the coming year, our mission remains the same, building the future, emphasizing the customer experience, employee development, rebuilding the system, and innovative business solutions. But safety is the foundation of all that we do at SEPTA. We began the Never Too Busy for Safety employee-focused safety program in 2012, and we've been working continuously to improve our safety culture. SEPTA is an industry leader in the implementation of positive train control, and last May we became the first commuter railroad east of the Mississippi and the second in the nation to implement PTC on the entire regional rail system. Additionally, following 3 incidents last year on the Norristown High-Speed Line, trolley lines, and Market-Frankfurt line, we made a decision to take a deeper dive into safety to identify and improve our operations, programs, and procedures authority-wide. We have mobilized teams within the authority to reevaluate organization and culture, training, rules and procedures, technology, and signal violation prevention. Since initiating the Operational Safety Improvement Plan, we have revitalized and enhanced our operator new hire and recertification training program, approved the hiring of 5 new trainers, and installed new railroad simulators. Less than 2 years ago, 10,000 transit riders became early adopters in the first phase of the new SEPTA Key program. Today, there are over 730 key cards in circulation, and to date, 133.7 million trips have been taken using key cards. 123,500 senior key ID cards have been issued, and seniors are taking an average of 280,000 trips each week. We appreciate the council offices that offer SEPTA Key registration to their constituents. As I mentioned earlier, SEPTA is building the future, one that is strong for the city, the region, and our customers and every employee. 9,400 dedicated employees work to make the system run every day. Our workforce is diverse and reflects our ridership in the communities we serve. 64% of SEPTA employees are minorities and 20% are women. 51% of our employees live in the city of Philadelphia. We are also proud of the non-traditional roles held by women at SEPTA and implemented a new program to provide career and leadership development for current and future tradeswomen of SEPTA. SEPTA is also committed to supporting local businesses and the jobs they provide to our citizens. Recently, we shared the results of a new economic impact study showing that SEPTA's 5-county service region, with Philadelphia at its core, is the economic engine of the Commonwealth, generating 41% of the state's economic activity, with 32% of its population on just 5% of its landmass. This degree of economic productivity and density is not possible without safe, efficient, and accessible SEPTA service. As one of the area's largest employers, SEPTA also supports the economy as a jobs provider and purchaser of goods and services to keep the system running. In the city of Philadelphia, the total value of this economic activity averages $1.69 billion per year, supporting 13,390 jobs and $1.11 billion in worker earnings. Over the last 3 years, SEPTA awarded contracts of over $1.32 billion to businesses and employers in the city of Philadelphia, and we have increased our outreach to invite more area companies to bid on SEPTA. SEPTA takes a proactive approach to its DBE, or Disadvantaged Business Enterprise program. SEPTA is one of only 5 agencies in the Commonwealth that still certifies firms as DBE. SEPTA recently expanded our staff in an effort to certify more firms. We currently have 841 certified DBE firms in our directory, of which 25% are Philadelphia-based, and we share this information with the city OEO office. When awarding contracts, SEPTA must comply with federal requirements for DBE participation, and we achieved a 20% DBE participation rate for recently completed projects. SEPTA is a vital part of living and working in the city of Philadelphia. We are proud each year to partner on so many important initiatives with the city and members of council. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak about SEPTA accomplishments over the past year. City Council's continued support of public transportation through city matching funds for the authority's operating and capital budgets is greatly appreciated. We will be happy to answer any questions that the members of council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Knuble. You were in first place, but, you know, I had to bump you back down. You're back down to number 4 now. All right. But thank you for your testimony. And thank you for a good job. I mean, thank you guys, and I want to particularly thank you about the Hub of Hope. People are talking about that all over the place. I want to thank my good friend and colleague who made me finally go underground. 'Cause I don't ever go out, you know. He said, you got to go down here, see what's going on, and you and your team, we walked the site, and we got a sense, and I'm understanding now we're getting around sometimes 200 and more individuals on a daily basis coming in for some level of treatment, all the other things associated with what we do down there. So I want to really say I appreciate what you guys have done. Got a couple of quick questions. Let me jump on this one, unscripted. Advertisement, you know, always interacted with my friends and colleagues in the government about advertisement revenues. Can you kind of briefly tell me where you guys are in terms of your revenue generation?
16?
Because we always are.
It's about $16 million annually. Some of it is in naming rights, obviously advertising signs, things like that. And then the partnership that we built with the city on the urban panels over the entrances to the steps into the stations.
Okay. So, and my understanding is that the individuals seeking the opportunities to advertise, they're looking for, understandably, the most visible sites with the most pedestrian and vehicular traffic. You know, somewhere like maybe 15th Street, across the street, where unfortunately we the city can't figure out a way to move ahead on our proposed advertising initiative. But okay, good to hear the revenue still flowing in. Moving traffic. So we see that you have the expansion of the bus service, the express bus service on Roosevelt Boulevard. And I know in a lot of other cities that they don't have, you know, stops on every corner like we do. I'll never, as a politician, I will never advocate for that, but, you know, if somebody else does it, and I'll look the other way. But the bottom line is, you know, we're used to having stops. Does that bus service essentially have extended locations in terms of stops? Is that how you were able to move people in a much quicker way, or how does that work?
Just way fewer stops. That Roosevelt Direct, that service up there, I forget it. How many stops did it have? 8 stops only. Right. And when we kept some of the existing routes. When you look at the net increase in ridership, it went up 14% in just 5 months. So having that high frequency, fewer stops has really benefited that particular service. And it's a great starting point to think about how we should do bus service. Like most cities, our bus service is losing a little bit of ridership every year. And part of it is congestion and other things that are affecting it. Obviously, it's ride sharing is also affecting it. But the point that I think is very important is that our bus service is slow, and that's one of the things that we're working on, how to get that service to be faster.
A lot of traffic congestion. Tell my good friend, Mr. Carroll, that. Hear that, Mr. Carroll?
Yes, I do.
And
Sorry, Mike.
this is called the bully pulpit for a reason. Right? I got to keep bringing it up every time you come in here. Sorry. You know, I do this in jest, so we're actually cool. King of Prussia. I'm excited that there's this discussion about that. It's clearly way overdue. Is that really going to happen? I know there's a lot of discussion.
Well, right now, we've moved into the final environmental impact statement. That's a really good place to be because basically, for the most part, people accept the project. We have a route. And so now, really, there's a lot of things moving forward. We're working on putting out the start of the design. In about a month, we'll put out a proposal for that. We're also looking at ways to finance this project. And that's, you know, there's really no money been allocated for the construction, and it's over $1 billion. But it's a fantastic project. That's the 3rd largest job center in our region. That area has a lot of development going on in it, and really it's absolutely important for access to jobs from the city.
All right. And similarly, the proposed or the potential of extending the Broad Street subway into the Navy Yard, is that something that
study
we've been talking about forever?
Yeah, there's a study that's just about ready to come out.
Okay.
We're just putting together the final touches on that, and it's not released yet, so I don't really want to talk about it a lot. But yes, that's an important initiative and definitely one of the 3 possible Amazon sites. So everyone's paying a close attention to that.
Okay, understand. Speaking about moving people back and forth and getting people to where the jobs are, PUB, Philadelphia Unemployment Project, they have been working PUB forever, trying to make sure that we can get people to the jobs, i.e. reverse commuting. Can you tell me where that is? I haven't gotten a call from them yet. They usually get a call around budget time.
Well, right now, with what they're proposing, there's only a small shortage on the match, and we're working with the state, and we'll be reaching out to the city how to figure that out. So I don't think they have a big problem this year, and people are working to solve it.
All right, that's good. Okay, thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Greenlee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, first of all, if PUP hasn't called you, I think they're calling Councilman Green and I a lot, so maybe that's why they've left you alone for a little bit. Good morning, everybody. Just want to join first Council President's statement on a hub of hope. I remember when we first walked through there and saw what it was like, and maybe we were a little pessimistic that was ever going to turn into what it was. Yeah, he pointed at you, if you noticed.
The elevator.
But it's a real major plus down there. The services that are provided are terrific.
It was a fantastic partnership because it took everybody working together.
Yeah.
We built that in 5 months.
Oh, I know. It was amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So that was everybody working together. City, Project Home, SEPTA. It was a great partnership.
No, it was, and it's really working well down there, as the President said. And on a similar note, I just see Chief Nestel over there. He and his people have been very responsive to issues down in Suburban Station, which I know can get challenging sometimes. And since, as I've gotten older, I stay down there a lot for lunchtime because it's not as cold. So I hear from the businesses, but they're very happy with the service that has been provided down there. You know.
Yes, it's a challenging issue, but one that we're up to the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I just want to mention, I know it's not completed yet, but the new Route 49 that has been proposed, I know they're still working a little bit on the ends of the routes there.
Yeah, and I think there's a public hearing coming up.
Yeah,
in May.
there is. Yeah, I was talking to Wendy
but
about it.
We're paying close attention to that. It's an important initiative to complete.
And that was really started by folks in my home area who, as the population changed a little bit, a lot of people were going out to University City, and SEPTA's been very responsive on that too. So
absolutely important to do.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick questions. You mentioned about losing ridership, and I remember reading a story about that. And if my memory's right, it said that particularly in the off hours.
Yes.
And I guess that's a little bit of a chicken and egg kind of thing. But I guess the question is it? Because I hear some people tell me, well, I don't use it at those hours because the bus doesn't run that frequently. And I assume the bus doesn't run as frequently, so people don't take it.
Well, it is a tougher issue because our frequencies open up because our ridership drops. And then really that's when ride-sharing services are going to take some of our riders. So that is part of the issue. So we that's really, we're working on a 3-year redesign of our bus service, and we're doing that. We're about to put out a proposal for that. We had an initial small study done, but now we're moving to really make sure, and it's been a long time since we looked at our bus network, and there's been a lot of changes in population and jobs, and so it's going to be the reason it takes 3 years is because we're really going to do a lot of outreach, and we're working very closely with Mike and the city to make sure that it's done well.
Okay, all right, appreciate that. And lastly, and I don't know if this is a major problem, but I've heard some people talk, your app, that, showing when the bus is coming and all. Some people are saying that it's not always accurate. They're saying the bus is coming, it doesn't. Have you heard much about that, or is that still something
For
you're
a
working
while,
on?
we had a problem with some of the buses not showing up or becoming ghost buses.
Right.
And I think we've settled that
think you've done
particular issue. But I am having, our IT department is doing kind of a line-by-line verification and going out and checking to make sure that the information's accurate.
Okay, great. All right, appreciate that. Okay, again, thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it, and thank you, SEPTA, for and Otis for really working the true year of partnerships this year, of how everybody's going to talk about the hope, and we do love it and appreciate that, but I'm sure everybody will touch on it. But, I mean, just the job you did with the Eagles Parade and
Thank you.
how people were able to get in and out. And I thought this year even, some people were upset about the change in direction, but if you looked at the access points and the way for people to get in and out, at the end of it was usually when you have your big crush. There were lines, obviously, but most of the people knew there were going to be lines going when time to leave, and you were able to get, majority of people where they wanted to go when they wanted to do it. So I think applause goes out to SEPTA for all your partnerships. Even with that, obviously, the Philadelphia Spring Cleanup that you partnered with, and and as you're working now with Vision Zero as the city goes, and zero waste. And so it's great to see us all trying to coordinate our efforts together to come to a solution, or at least a vision that we could all reach working together accordingly. But I had a couple questions from my colleague, Councilman Sanchez, had asked me to ask, and since we're talking about zero waste, was about, I guess, how the trash is being handled in some of the areas with SEPTA along the Kensington Carter and some of the other locations. I know buses do not have trash cans on them for specific reasons.
Yeah, from a security perspective, I
Right.
think that would be very bad to have them on the bus. But I think there's a meeting coming up, and Fran Kelly from my staff will be there. And we certainly want to partner with Streets Department and see what solutions are possible. And we've already worked with the Councilwoman's office on improvements at Allegheny Station and the way we did cleaning there on the L. So we have a track record of making things happen in her area.
And I agree, and I think continue to work together to improve those areas is important. And the other question that Councilman Sanchez had was about and you mentioned this in your testimony, the data system for the constituents to receive cards. What would be the timeline for how long it takes for when the district office, say, initiates a person to be able to access a card?
So when they finally get it, in other words,
Yes.
somebody comes into the office and then when it comes
Submit it.
back? It's about 2 to 4 weeks. If they come to our headquarters or to Suburban Station, it's an instant process. We can process them right there. Otherwise, it's 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay. Is there a way, I know like with the state and some other folks, is there any way to increase the timeline on if a person goes to a district office to do that?
To try to make it faster.
Yes.
Yeah. We've been continually making it faster. We'll continue to work on that process. We do know that it's still a little long.
Because it's great to have people have access all over to be able to get the cards, and sometimes it's when they have to wait longer, they just, we're not going to get it anyway. So hopefully if we could shorten the timeline between receiving it and then having to go to just your
There
location.
are other forms, though, that they have still are valid, so it's not like they can't ride. So they have other ways right now to ride, even if they don't have their senior key card. But I get you, and we
Right.
agree.
Okay, and the last thing was, as we do see the high usage of car share and other things, other options of transportation on our streets, even bicyclists. Some of those people who would take, are driving bikes would have taken transportation in the past, and people are using public transportation. People are using Uber or Lyft or other car share services or van pooling. Do we see that, and it was brought up about looking at our bus stops, that, I know people are used to, every block you stop and how that goes, and now maybe if people don't like if you make it every 2 blocks because they have to walk a block, but would that increase not only the quickness of the ride, but also make it more viable to help with traffic congestion and other things that happen when you stop block by block?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So, these things are all on the table, but, people like their stops, so it'll
People
be...
don't like change.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting situation, but that's why we're doing this process, carefully and with a lot of outreach, but certainly speeding up the bus network, especially what we saw on Roosevelt Boulevard, really makes it much more attractive.
With the direct bus. And,
Yes.
and it seems like, how is your ridership compared on the direct bus since you implemented it?
It's up 14%, so in 5 months, which is a big jump.
That is a big jump. So it shows you that there is interest in the public to get from one place to another quicker.
Yes.
If they can. And so I think it's a well worth the research. And again, anytime we do change something, we'll have backlash from the public on certain things. But then once they get used to it and they see that the ease of use is there. And again, if you pilot certain things and things don't work, we go back to how they were.
Adjust them back, right.
End of the game. But I really appreciate your partnership this year, amongst others, and always willingness to work with us. And I want to give kudos to Frank Kelly also, who's always accessible, and any problems and concerns that we do have, always we get a call or response back, and
Great.
willingness to help. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone? So I had a couple of questions. And number one, I wanted to thank SEPTA for, really keeping Philadelphia running in so many different ways. I think that overall, the transportation network that we have here in Philadelphia is something that other cities look at, pay attention to. And so when we think about how we're sort of a model, I think we also have to look at some of the things that we could probably do a little bit better. And specifically, I wanted to talk about Nicetown and the power plant. Not power plant, I'm sorry, power generator. Is that correct? I want to use the correct
Combined heat and
terminology.
power project, yeah.
Okay. And so we have this power generator that has been proposed and is in the planning stages and moving forward by SEPTA in Nicetown. We've met on this issue on a number of different occasions, and I know I've met quite frequently with Fran and his team. So Fran, I don't know if you want to come up and get on the hot seat. Oh, he's the expert? Okay, all right. Well, listen, the more the merrier. But we wanted to talk about what has been presented to the community thus far, and how we can change what is being proposed. And looking at this particular community, and I think we have brought to SEPTA's attention the fact that this has the highest rate of asthma in the city of Philadelphia in this particular part of Nicetown. And so when we look at, the future, one of the things you said in your comments, I'm sorry, I'm getting over the flu. One of the things you said in your comments was that, you wanted to talk about the future and that SEPTA was thinking about the future. And I noticed in your comments here, one of the things you said or wrote was that by 2021, over 90% of SEPTA's bus fleet will be hybrid electric or all electric buses. And so I think overall, when it comes to things such as this, SEPTA is moving in the right direction. So I cannot understand how we could be moving in the right direction in this regard, and yet at the same time, seemingly moving backwards when it comes to the location and placing this generator at this site. It really seems tone deaf, to be quite honest, knowing what we know, that this is an area that is high in concentrations in terms of poverty, crime, violence, blight, all of the issues that you would want to have addressed are here in this community. And yet to add this generator to the site, I think is really tone deaf, especially thinking of all of the other things that SEPTA is doing. So I wanted you to respond to that, if you would.
Okay. The federal government, state level, even governor's office, they all advocate for increased usage of combined heat and power projects. So it is something that helps reduce emissions, and this particular project reduces emission by 41% regionally, which is the equivalent of taking 3,000 cars off the street. So from a regional perspective, not having as much coal being burned to feed SEPTA's traction power needs is good. Then if you look locally at this location, we've taken great steps to make sure that air quality is not affected in any measurable way. In fact, we've done extra studies, done studies of how to design the stack to disperse the emissions, and literally the studies show that at the fence line or our property line, that the emissions are virtually indetectable. When you couple that with the things that we're doing like hybrid buses, we're also powering the Midvale garage, our biggest garage right there, through this CHP project, and we're taking away the boilers. So we're using all the heat from the CHP generating plant to feed the heat into our location so we don't have to run boilers, which will, that's good. We're also doing, as I mentioned, the second biggest solar project ever done in the city, and 3 of the 4 are in North Philadelphia area, Fern Rock, Roberts Yard right next to this location, and where's the other one? Barrage Shop, which is not far away as well. So we've been extremely sensitive to the issue locally and have taken a lot of care and gone way beyond what the requirements request. This can still be a disagreement, though. I mean, we also were granted a permit. Now there's an appeal on that. But we certainly have always wanted to take into account what was going on locally. And so it is something that we do not take lightly. And overall, it does fit into the efforts that we're trying to do.
Knowing that the environmental conditions in the community, recognizing what they are, I understand that you all have taken what you may feel are significant steps to mitigate and address what is currently happening. But I think the best policy is likely that this location not be the location for this specific type of a project. And I would say that because we just don't know what will happen down the road. We don't know what's going to happen in an area that is already heavily consumed with pollutants and has just so many factors and issues. We just don't know what the effect will be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. I know that you all have met EPA standards, but the problem that I have and that I've written to you all about is that the EPA standards are low and have not been adjusted in many, many years. And so I would say that they're just completely out of date, and it's like, well, we passed their hurdle. Well, their hurdle was so low that it just didn't, it was almost as if there was no hurdle.
That's where we've taken great care to go above and beyond of the design of the plant with state-of-the-art equipment, with the stack that we have, to make sure that the emissions were virtually indetectable at the edge of our property. I mean, that can be a point of dispute, but that's what our studies have shown.
Is there anything else that SEPTA is willing to do to try to address what is going to be potentially happening at that site? I mean, I'm just thinking forward. We're here talking about the budget. We're here talking about the city's contribution to SEPTA, and certainly taxpayers are part of the Nicetown community, which would be affected. And so how are we addressing this issue to the folks who are paying for this system?
Well, I mean, there's other, as I mentioned too, that we're continuing to do projects to reduce emissions overall in that portion of the city. We're testing out 25 all-electric buses. If that works well, that may be the future for us. So we will continue to work on being as clean, environmentally friendly as we can. As I mentioned, the orders from the very beginning of the project were to make sure that virtually indetectable emissions at our property, right at the edge of our property.
I hear you, and I know that the bell is rung, so I know that my time is up for now. So I'll come back around on the second round. But I would say that I think that SEPTA, as I started out, SEPTA has done some good things in terms of the environment, but there's just this big glaring omission, and I think it's something to be addressed. And it wasn't in your comments to City Council today. And I think that kind of speaks to, maybe it was an oversight, but maybe there's something else to that, and that it's not considered important enough or worthy of consideration or conversation. And I just think, once again, it's a neighborhood that is really struggling. The people there are really struggling. When we talk about, we're focused on the future. Whose future? For the future of kids who are, from other neighborhoods, or for these kids who live in this neighborhood who are most affected by asthma than any other child in the city of Philadelphia. And so I do think that SEPTA has more of a responsibility, even with the work that you say that you've already done. I think that SEPTA has more of a responsibility to look at other things that can be done, other ways that this can be addressed. So, and with that being said, the last thing I want to say, since the president's not at the front yet, is I wanted to just say hello to Mr. Captain Estelle and thank him so much for all the work he does. I follow him on Twitter, and it's always very entertaining. So, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gim.
Thank you very much, Council President. So I wanted to join my colleagues and acknowledge all the work that SEPTA has been doing in a number of different areas. I'm a big believer in the crucial investments in public transit, especially as a way to promote fairness, safety, opportunity, and especially equity. So I appreciate your partnership on tackling some of those tough issues, especially as they relate to innovation and equity. Your collaboration with Vision Zero, the commitment to sustainability, the contributions to the Hub of Hope, the participation on the Transit Task Force, I think are all really great examples of the ways you're helping us try to move forward. And as we begin to consider a substantial transit redesign in the city, I'm really hopeful that, our partnership and dialogue together on that Connect team really helps us think through transit infrastructure, and I think a lot of that starts with dialogue. So, as you know, I'm chair for children and youth, and I'm especially interested in how public transit can not only best serve our young people, but also help SEPTA build up a new generation of
Yes.
users
Yes.
who will be, using of your services. My son is 19 years old, still does not have a car because he has grown up on public transit all his life, would like to not pay for insurance, would like to not have to worry about that, and really believes very strongly in his ability to get around the city as much as possible on public transit. But, as we know, this is a city that has youth who are significantly poor. 39% of our young people are born into poverty, which is a pretty staggering statistic when you think about it. A number of cities like New York, St. Paul, and San Francisco all have programs that offer reduced fees for young people. In New York, for example, youth-serving organizations are provided with free New York City subway certificates for educational and recreational trips. And given, the fact that we're really working hard to get our young people connected, not only to services, but to workforce development, I am worried about organizations that serve youth who have to bear the burden of the cost to work alongside young people. Youth United for Change, for example, spends about $8,000 a year on tokens. Covenant House spends $18,000 a year for their homeless youth. Are you looking at ways how you can better serve some of these nonprofit agencies that serve our youth to offset the cost of transit for them as they work to get around the city? And are you willing to work with some of the nonprofit partners who serve our youth and vulnerable populations to consider better discounts for young people on transit?
Well, one of the things that I'd like to say first off is that I was with Superintendent Height the other day, and I really do think that we can build a better partnership with the school system and show this young generation, get them more familiar with SEPTA, not even just for riding to get to school, but even for careers and all the hiring that we do. And so that is definitely something that we want to work on. In terms of reducing the cost to some of these agencies, the problem is that if we reduce costs, we have only so much budget, and then we would be concerned with having to pull back the amount of service that we have. I'm not saying that there are not innovative partnerships or ways, or even working with sponsorships from other charitable entities to provide some of the funds that those agencies might use for transportation costs. So we're always willing to talk about that. It's just that if we reduce costs, it ends up making us have to reduce service.
So that doesn't sound like, are you willing to enter into some conversations with some of
Sure.
the organizations in particular? Because I think, some of the burden is, significant with some of these organizations. They provide workforce development, they provide leadership training.
Yes.
They're doing all these really great programs. They're keeping our young people busy after school. And as you know, especially our youth that are homeless, it's kind of crushing to ask.
I think, the
Covenant House
opportunities to
spend
partner those
$18,000.
agencies with charitable entities that might cover their costs would be really something that we could work together on. And then, I know that most of there are examples of reduced fares, but they're typically not being subsidized by the transit agency, because if you do that across the country, it means that we have to pull back on our service. If you start instituting those programs, you have less revenue, and now you have to pull back the amount of service you run. So absolutely willing to entertain and have those discussions, though. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah,
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Put on the record that this, Councilwoman Gim, this is not a new issue, a new challenge. You should know, Mr. General Manager, that your predecessor and actually former council member David Cohen had these type of discussions, and your predecessor and David Cohen both reckon with the reality that you're describing with regards to the financial burden it would be, but your former predecessor and the school district were able to work through how you could do that in the way where it was a win-win. So I put that on the record simply to say that that is a conversation you want to continue, and that somehow the school district and your predecessor were able to figure it out.
I'd like to mention, too, that as we transferred from tokens and that type of, old-fashioned system, and we went to the new electronic system, we've been very careful not to increase or pass on any extra costs to the community and social service agencies that do provide fair instruments to people, and we've been very careful about that. Other cities they've had trouble by having increase of costs that passed on, and they could actually then they had fewer people that they could help. And so we've been careful with that, but we're absolutely willing to entertain discussion.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Councilwoman, for that clarity. I appreciate that. I mean, I think some of my conversations were recognizing that there was a agreement worked out with the school district and trying to think about the things outside of school that we're trying to address. And similar to what the Councilwoman mentioned, which is a longer conversation that happens, is as SEPTA evolves, I think it's becoming clearer, especially in a city that's large like ours, is that transit is not a matter or should not be determined as a matter of wealth and privilege, but as a public good. I mean, it is public transit. And if we have, per your conversation, if we have simply a user-based approach to funding public transit, we may not be equitable. And what I mean by that is that there's been some discussions around the country about the ways in which public transit in particular can be responsive to the needs of different incomes of Philadelphians, so that simply reducing the cost on young people doesn't mean that it's a flat loss for SEPTA, but that could be made up for in other ways, whether there's something that, the costs can be associated differently. So, for example, you can talk about fare capping for individuals who can't pay the cost of monthly transit, low-income fares for people who qualify based on their income. It doesn't mean that people don't pay. It just means that they might be offset in other ways. And I'm curious about whether, has SEPTA been exploring or looking at what other cities have been doing to make sure that low-income riders are able to be able to navigate SEPTA without just coming under some kind of uniformity payment system, assuming that they have the same amount of ability to pay and use as the wealthiest members of our city?
We are working on these types of, we do pay attention to what's going on in the industry. Where, some of these things are only just emerging, but we're certainly, willing to sit down and talk with your office and look in greater detail at any of these ideas.
Sure. I mean, I think that this is a longer-term conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. But, as SEPTA is looking at redesign and other things, I just wanted to make sure that my time wasn't overly taken up. Could I ask one more question? Thank you, Council President. So I had an additional question about the transparency around transfer fees, especially as we move under the SEPTA key. So I've been hearing from some of my constituents that there's confusion about how transfers will actually work under the SEPTA key once the paper transfers are phased out. So riders have been told that they'll receive the transfer rate at valid transfer points, but it's not clear whether those transfer points are clearly known or identified publicly. And there's questions about whether you can tell on your SEPTA transfer fee, how would a rider know how much they're being charged? Are they being charged a transfer fee, or are they being charged the full fare? Will people be able to know at the point in which they pay so that they're not shocked by that? Or do they, because one of the concerns is that you won't find out. It's like the easy pass. You don't really know unless you have to go through and research it, and none of us looks at our easy pass, I assume many of us, I will fess up to saying, I do not personally look at my Easy Pass account on a regular basis to see where and when I'm traveling, how much I'm paying. But I think, especially for the transfer fee, because it's unclear about where the transfer points are, what is SEPTA doing to ensure that these become clear to users, riders, at the point in which they're actually using their SEPTA key?
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Burnfield. I'm the Deputy General Manager and Treasurer for SEPTA, working with the SEPTA staff on the key project. So for paper transfers, just like tokens, where we have given at least 30 to 60 days notice before we have made any changes. For tokens, as we have phased out that program, we started that last November and December with the phase out of tokens in a very gradual process. Do the same thing for paper transfers. We, as part of the SEPTA budget process, had a hearing over the last 7 days about our operating budget. A question came up Monday concerning about how we would handle the paper transfer. So we committed that we will have a 60-day, at least a minimum of 60 days before we phase those out. With the new SEPTA key, for the key, if you have a weekly or monthly pass, the transfer is included as part of the price. If you have the travel wallet included as part of the key, the fare will remain what it is now for a transfer, which is $1. So there's no change in fare policy as part of the key program. There are several ways in which you can check your balance. If you happen to have the travel wallet, you can check at any fare kiosk at any of our stations or bus.
What is a travel wallet?
Travel wallet is you can, if with your key card, you can place value on the key card anywhere from $10 to $250. So let's say, for example, you put $20 on your key card, that as you use your key card, you would be charged the $2 base fare for whenever you travel. So it's sort of similar to like an Easy Pass type concept, that if you ride SEPTA not as frequently, where you would find maybe say a weekly or monthly pass to be the best option for you, but if you're more of an occasional rider, that you may find the travel wallet to be a better choice for you. But on the travel wallet, you can find out what your balance is by going to any fare kiosk at any of our stations, by checking on the screen as to what your balance is, also through the website or through our customer call center as to what the value is.
See it when you
Councilwoman.
run it through?
Councilwoman,
Yeah.
you're like,
Okay, I will pick
Can
up
you come
all
back?
these questions because I don't think I quite got the answer.
thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start off by saying on the record what I said off the record, and that is that I very much appreciated the briefing that was convened by Councilman Kenyatta Johnson, because it just gave members and staffers that were there a very informed vision of what the future looks like with SEPTA. And I wanted to, it was a first for me, and it's one I think should be shared with the Philadelphia Visitors Convention Bureau, and I will certainly, as a board member, make sure that the leadership there knows that. So thank you for that. Pleased to hear also that you're in preliminary conversations with the school district around how to intentionally align the future with the young people and getting them integrated into potential workforce opportunities at SEPTA. How far along are you with those discussions? Are these early discussions? Have you ID'd a staffer who can take that part of the ship and run with it so that the two are actually aligned?
We have it, we have a pretty good partnership with schools already where we're going there. We're talking about, opportunities at SEPTA. We're meeting with teachers to make sure that curriculum, especially things where people are more geared towards becoming, let's say, a mechanic or a signal maintainer, electronic, person or a repairer. So we've been working in those types of situations. It was just a chance that I had with Dr. Height the other day, was actually to talk about something that wasn't here, there, something that would maybe be more across the board, a special day or week or something that would be, something that we could support and really make it pretty global across the city.
All right, then. I would think that a number of members of Council's Education Committee might be interested in being a partner with you around that kind of endeavor. So please keep us
Sure.
in mind. Thank you for your numbers around MBE, WBE activity. Of course, that's a standard question that we ask for all departments. I want to go behind the numbers and ask, how well is SEPTA doing with regards, let me back up. One criticism we continue to get from some of our city departments is slow payment to subcontractors and to sub-consultants. How well is SEPTA doing with regards to monitoring that process to make sure or ensure that subcontractors and sub-consultants are being paid on time?
Here we go. Andy Abdallah from my staff will explain that.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. President, council
morning.
members.
Good morning. Just state your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Andy Abdallah. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Procurement,
If you
Supply
could please
Chain.
pull your mic closer to you. Thank you, Jim.
Is this better? Okay. Sorry. My name is Andy Abdallah. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Procurement, Supply Chain, and DBE. I do oversee the DBE program. We do take making sure that subcontractors and sub-consultants are paid in a timely manner. Within our contract for the DBEs, there is a provision that ensures that the DBEs get paid within 20 days.
So you have a staffer that monitors that process?
We do have our DBE staff monitors the progress and the work that the DBEs are doing in the field. They do monitor when they get paid. We do get copies of canceled checks as the checks are being made from the prime contractor to the DBEs.
And how is one to approach challenges where that is not the case?
So when there's a DBE that's not being paid timely, they do reach out to our DBE folks, and then once we know that the DBE is not being paid, we do bring the prime contractor in and have a discussion to see really what is going on and how come the DBE are not being paid for their work.
Okay, all right, because infrequently, my office at least gets alerts that they are sub with SEPTA and need help in ensuring, not that they do not get paid, it's just a slow payment. And we know when subs are not paid on a timely basis, their businesses become at risk. So I would need to put that on your radar screen.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, Mr. General Manager, you started in the system as a young person, and you grew up all the way up to leadership.
Yeah, 30 years now.
So, with that great story, and I do think that it's enormous when young people can grow a career, might there be in your protocols, your HR, a pathway by which young people are encouraged to rise, to gain the skills, do the work, and gain the skills and do the work so that they can grow in the system?
We do a lot of things to grow our managers now. We have something called AIM, and it's a program that we put together to help managers progress upward so that we make sure that we don't have to go outside, that primarily we're able to build our leaders from internally.
And you say it's called AIM?
AIM.
So that's an acronym for what? I'm just curious.
Advancing Internal Management.
Okay, but one has to be a manager to gain access to those workshops or the training, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
the other thing that we've started to do is working to get the frontline workforce the unionized members to make it easier for them to move to management. And so we've put things online and given them ideas about how to, if they feel they need additional education, where to go for that,
Okay.
how to prepare your resume, those kinds of things, so that we've been working to give them tips for
Advancement.
moving, yes, from the hourly ranks to management.
It's well recognized that your industry is not popular amongst women, but there's been a concerted effort to help women understand that, the world is your oyster, go after it. My office actually coordinated an event 3 or 4 years ago appealing to women, encouraging them to consider the type of opportunities that SEPTA offers. Might that be in the pipeline again going forward? Has there been any additional discussion as to how we can bring the world of SEPTA to the audience of girls and women?
Well, again, in the school, getting them early
Yes.
is really, really important. We also, in our discussions, have found that parents are also sometimes the ones that will discourage. So that's a little harder. We can get the kids in the schools, but how do we reach out to the parents? But we are, as an industry, public transportation is looking into doing a lot more explaining about what a great career it is. And then for us, we've created a group called Tradeswomen at SEPTA, because that's really an area that I grew up through our maintenance and construction programs and saw some wonderful female workers in mechanics and masons and carpenters. And so we're really working hard to make that something that the women that we have, we support well, and then we're working to
Make it sustainable.
use them to do outreach.
Tell the story.
Yep.
It was actually that group that my office coordinated with a few years ago. So please just keep us in mind when again you want to keep that issue on the radar screen in a big way. My last question, I'll put my environment and sustainability hat on. How well is SEPTA doing with regards to recycling, the handling of trash and the like, as has been intimated by
We have a
Councilwoman
very,
Bass?
very strong recycling program. Eric, you want to just give a little of the statistics quickly? Use this one, it's better. Eric Johansson.
Good morning. My name is Eric Johansson. I'm the Director of Innovation at SEPTA.
Put the mic directly in front of you.
In our last fiscal year, we recycled 65% of the materials that came through SEPTA, including 20% of the waste from our passenger stations, which is something we're very proud of because that's very visible to the customers and they can see our commitment to it right there in the station.
Very good. So there's a marketing program attached to that to help people change behavior?
There is. In fact, we've started, if you notice in some of our subway stations, we've started installing lids with smaller holes to make sure that the recycling material doesn't get contaminated.
Okay.
And on top of the lid, we've started installing SEPTA sustainability branded logos with pictures of what you can and cannot put in the recycling stream.
Okay, then thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Taubenberger, please.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. Solar power has become very much alive, and people see the relevance of it. I've gotten a number of correspondence pieces this week regarding solar power, and you mentioned in your early presentation that you're working on a couple solar power projects. I was wondering if you could, in as best detail as time would allow, go over them with us, if that's a possibility.
Eric, come on back. Our solar project.
Good morning again.
Morning.
So we are currently working on the second largest solar project in the city's history. In fact, a 3-megawatt project to cover 4 of our bus and rail maintenance facilities with solar panels. It'll be 3 megawatts, which is just barely smaller than the Eagles installation at Lincoln Financial Field. Should be online by the end of the year.
And what stations, or where would they be?
They're going to be at our Cowell Hill bus district, which is at 59th and Vine. at our Barrage facility, which is at 2nd and Wyoming, at our Fern Rock facility at 11th and Nedrow, and at our Roberts Yard facility, 342 Roberts Ave.
Okay. And how long, and when did you say again, so I get it right? When will that be online?
The project is currently towards the final stages of design, so construction will begin later this year.
And completed approximately
We're hoping by the end of the year.
by the end of the year?
Yeah.
All 4 would be online?
Yes.
Okay, and they will be providing all the illumination and things for that particular station and that sort of
No, the power generation capacity of the arrays represents about 25% on average of the total facility energy consumption.
Okay.
Even covering the entire roof with solar panels gets us about 25% of the load. But we're
25%.
coupling that with energy efficiency improvements such as LED lighting to reduce the load.
Sure, okay, 25%. New Jersey, the state of New Jersey has done a great deal, or at least gives the appearance they've done a great deal. Has New Jersey Transit done similar programs that you're aware of?
They have, yeah. New Jersey's solar market is historically been more robust than Pennsylvania's market.
And if they had, are you aware of any success, or their success or lack of success?
Not specifically, just to say that they're actively doing solar projects in New Jersey.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you very much. I did have a few good questions, but since I'm always put at the end, people have already talked about the homeless stuff and what we can do with, people are concerned about what about their fare. They just need a transfer, or they charge the whole amount for transportation. I guess I can ask that. So now where you can get a pass, I don't know what you can get since I don't ride SEPTA, but anyhow, however, if you ride it and you need to get a second.
Right. Make a transfer, yeah.
Right, so what happens in the new way?
Well, it functions the same way that it does now. It's just automatically done on your account. But ultimately, we're studying the transfer situation and really getting, right now, we're getting a lot better data from having the system. And so ultimately, everybody wants to look at the transfer and whether it should continue and how do we handle it. But it is a complicated situation because it affects how we price other passes, like weekly, monthly passes, and could lead to, if we eliminate transfer fees, could lead to, we have to pick up that money somewhere. So, but we are ultimately going to look at what to do with transfers going forward.
Thank you. I hate to admit it, but my husband's been gone 15 and a half years. I haven't ridden the subway since the two of us rode on there with Bill Clinton when he was president. So it's been a minute since we rode the subway. But I want to thank you. All your people are nice. All of you know how to deal with the public. I love having 61st Street, 61st and Pine. I like 40th Street and what we're doing. You all are really doing a fine job, and we're very grateful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Jones, for allowing me to go in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning still. But I want to join the chorus of people that have realized that SEPTA is the veins of the city by way of transportation. I've had opportunity to go out to Denver where they tout all of this great transportation infrastructure, and I'm looking at the rail line, and I'm looking at how they go from place to place saying they don't have anything on us.
Right.
In fact, they have a way to go before they catch up to us.
Absolutely.
And we don't recognize the investment that we've made in intermodal transportation in this city.
Seattle will spend more than $50 billion to get a system that's a quarter the size of ours.
And so it's almost like profits are not recognized at home, and therefore kudos to you and from those of us who get around to see how we compare to other cities, so thank you. Couple of things that I have, all politics is local, and I live, work, and play in the 4th Councilmanic District. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the status of the 52 bus route and the negotiations going forth about the Wissahickon turnaround and how we're moving on that. Because there are 83 households that the temporary, which has become 3 years now, which to some people is permanent, route.
Yep.
And I want to know, when is there good news coming? My understanding is that eventually we'll be able to go on that 52, and my late mother was mad at me because she couldn't go up to the drugstore that was on City Avenue because it stopped short and made the turn. So when are we going to anticipate being able to hit City Avenue, go all the way down to East Falls, and be able to turn around?
So just about to send a letter out on that so that everybody knows what's going on. We were finally successful in a real estate deal for expanding the Wissahickon Transportation Center.
Councilwoman Reynolds Brown is glad to hear that, because the second option was to send that 52 back by her house, which she was not pleased with.
So the property deal is going through. We're in design for the new transportation center. If you've been to Wissahickon, it's tight. So to add the 52, we had to rebuild. And we were doing it anyway. It's a very congested transportation center in any event. But we're looking to bid that the second quarter of 2019. So I would say that sometime in 2020, we would be able to move the 52 to that new location.
It is appreciated. I want to thank you also for working on some of these regional rail stations, particularly the one in Winfield. We're upgrading that. That comes with almost a bittersweet with the Penn Win building project. More and more millennial types, more and more young professional types are interested in being able to do transit-oriented development, be able to walk out their door, jump on mass transit, be at their workplace in a convenient, cost-effective manner. But what it has done is made those properties more desirable for developers and speculators that want to come in and move people out. We've had to take steps on good cause legislation so that wholesale disruption of people's lives didn't happen because they were priced out. So with that station, how are we doing? What can we expect? And particularly the digital design signs that I definitely want.
Okay. Winfield will actually be complete in September of 2018. It will have digital information signs. It'll really, what's nice is a brand new parking lot for real. A lot of that out there was kind of stone and different things. So it'll be first-class facility with better parking.
One thing on those, and I don't know, for extra bonus points, I guess I'll call it, we really need cameras at those stations. And I know there is a shared responsibility by way of, I think it's Amtrak, or who else do you call?
Amtrak.
Amtrak.
That line is ours, though.
Yeah, so we need cameras.
It may be in the scope. I'll have to check. We can get back to you on
I
that.
appreciate that, because otherwise there can be, even with well-lit, if it's not covered under surveillance, people take that as a target of opportunity, a place where crime seems happen.
I'm pretty sure when we build any new station now or redo a station, we put cameras, but we'll confirm that for you.
Thank you very much. On to a more difficult topic. I don't think in the history of Councilman Squilla being here, I've ever disagreed with him about anything, which is amazing to me. I love him, but I disagree with him. You know, I've never disagreed with him. His world and reality with younger millennial professionals who love walkable cities is sometimes very different than my district, which happens to be one of the largest senior citizen populated districts other than Councilman O'Neill. Other than Councilman O'Neill, I have more seniors in my district than anybody else. And so when we start talking about hipper modes of transportation with longer, extended, that sounds real cool until you have a walker. And until instead of traveling 1, maybe 2 blocks, it's now 4 blocks that they have to travel. And those little subtle differences are the difference between someone being able to do their shopping with a bag or having to call Uber or a nephew, relative, whatever, to go shopping. It is the difference between, yes, I'm gonna go out in this weather, or no, it's too much snow to negotiate. It's the difference between I can make my doctor's visit, or I'll maybe just skip this one. And so when you're planning these subtracted stops, you have to take in that in mind. When you're planning these traffic stops, the density in Squilla's district is different than Winfield, than Overbrook. The blocks are longer, they're more, so we have to really pay attention to those subtle differences so that we don't change the world of the people who live in those districts. And so I'm gonna need you to take a look.
No decisions are made. These are all just ideas and things that everybody's going to have to, work through. And that's why such a, cameras are in the scope for Winfield. That's why we have such a long outreach period as we look at our bus network.
So I'm gonna bring up something that I don't know if it's been announced yet, and hopefully it doesn't cause too much controversy. The 57th Street Bridge, now watch my councilwoman right over there, is possibly going to be up for construction.
Sure.
Can we begin? She stopped smiling now, as you can see. It connects 2 vital communities, Winfield, Overbrook Farms, and other connecting neighborhoods. How close are we to pulling the trigger on that, and what will that mean by way of scope of services?
Your project? Whose project?
You didn't know about it? That's all right. See, I bring
57th Street?
59th Street Bridge.
59.
Councilman, if you give us a chance, we'll coordinate and figure out when that's coming up. It could be that project's actually on the city side. I'm sorry, this is Michael Carroll,
We're not doing the
Deputy
project.
Managing Director for the Office of Transportation.
I mean, the reason I'm mentioning it now is I don't want this to hit people as a surprise. You're good planners. I know you're thoughtful
59th
like that.
And Woodland?
But
59th.
where we often fall short
That doesn't come.
is informing the community.
Yeah.
And if you've ever traveled a Friday evening across that bridge and that connected infrastructure, it is a nightmare. And so when the council president talks about our traffic planning ongoing, it is not just Center City.
Understood.
It is working class neighborhoods that have a thing called a rush hour. And figuring out alternatives transportation, whether it's shuttle buses from remote parking, to figure this out. We use remote parking for big events. The Man is one. Parkside Business and Technology Center is another. There's the Upland Way infrastructure, both the Acme. We need to think of how do we get around that in the most convenient way for the masses of people. And you don't have to answer that now. I'll wait on my next round. But the things that I care about are those stops in consideration of age and geography. And if you can drill down on your planning to consider those things, I'll consider that. I consider that as accommodating the 150,000 people I represent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And we don't disagree very much either, so that's all right. Councilman Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I just want to say, echo some of the comments from my colleagues regarding the work that we've done in reference to the Hub for Hope. I don't think that gets enough credit, considering that this is the first transportation agency or authority in the nation that has taken that type of leadership in reference to addressing homelessness in an urban area. So I want to congratulate you on that. Also, the fact that for your work regarding DBEs, I don't think others have a perspective that when the city got out of the certification business, that SEPTA has kind of become the de facto certification agency. I know you've increased, based on your testimony and based on past experience, increased staffing to handle certifications, and I think that's a true service for the city, so thank you for that as well. Earlier you talked about the Rapid Bus Transit Initiative, and ridership has been up by about 14% as a result of that. I know in other parts of the world, especially in South America, rapid bus transit is a means of transportation that's used very well. Are there other areas of the city that you may think that we may use that type of initiative?
Yes, I mean, we are talking with the Office of Transportation. Mike, do you want to talk about that?
The short answer is yes, we are. I think the strategy that we're taking is, now that we know that we have a new tool in the toolbox, for any corridor where we're thinking about improving bus service, or this, some conversation maybe about maybe we put light rail in here or extend some other kind of service. Now we know we have something we can put in quickly that's going to make a real difference in the quality of service and the experience for the rider, and is also going to boost ridership. So just for example, there's no commitments made, but we've been looking at whether this makes sense along City Line Avenue, Delaware Avenue, whether this is a good interim solution to get people to the Navy Yard from different parts of the city. And also we are actually submitting grant applications where we have the ability to seek funding to do an extension that gets the direct bus service to Broad Street, Hunting Park's where we're looking at, and then past Broad Street to come down to the Wissahickon Transportation Center. So it's a long-term proposition, but I think as we bite off the little pieces, you will see more of a network of this type of service start to take hold in the city, and we're really encouraged by the success we've had, and we think we can replicate it in other places.
Okay. On page 4 of your testimony, you talked about the SEPTA Key Initiative, and I know for the past couple of days I've been seeing the advertisements you're doing in reference to the countdown to getting rid of SEPTA tokens. One of the questions I have, especially as Vice Chair of the Council Committee on Aging and also Chair of the Council Committee on Disabilities, what steps are you taking to inform our seniors, my father would say seasoned citizens in the city, as well as those with learning and physical differences, on the transition from tokens to SEPTA Key?
Mr. Burnfield be best to answer this. I could, but he's better.
Okay. Councilman, what we've done to date is we've had over 200 community events for public outreach as part of the KEY program. Right now, we're in the midst of about a 3-week process where we have staff out at various radio stations, TV stations, and radio stations that are diverse in terms of their listening population, so that we are covering the entire city. We've had 3 open houses with social service agencies. We have 2 more scheduled, and we'll schedule more throughout the spring and summer. 500 social service agencies we've contacted as part of the transition. So we've continued to reach out to the community throughout the city here as we've had the phase out of tokens since January.
So what happens to an individual who is a senior or someone who has a physical learning difference 10 days from now when tokens are no longer being available, and that's the only form of means they have to use transportation?
For seniors, right now seniors ride free. So we have 123,000 seniors who have already transitioned over to the senior key card ID. There's other forms of identification that you can use to ride SEPTA for free, including your driver's license, your state ID, and we're still accepting the Pennsylvania paper identification cards, the commonly referred to as the yellow and blue cards. The transition from tokens will not impact those customers.
Okay, what about those who have some type of physical disability difference?
The reduced fare, we have about 20,000 customers who have transitioned over to the reduced fare card. Also, similar to the state identification cards for seniors, there are state identification cards for those customers, and we will continue to accept those cards.
Okay. On page 2 of your testimony, you indicated that the city share of SEPTA's budget is about $84 million, which represents about 6% of the dollars that the authority has. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I know recently you've been having conversations with the Philadelphia Unemployment Project. My understanding is that there's been some recent conversations and movement in that regard, working with PennDOT. Can you provide for the record an update regarding where we are in that initiative?
Sure. Last Friday, PennDOT staff met with SEPTA in the morning, then met with representatives of PUP in the afternoon to talk about the program for the current fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year. The Commonwealth will continue to provide approximately $360,000 in funding for the program with a match requirement. We're looking at some streamlining and some efficiencies in the program in terms of how the program is administered. Also working with the Commonwealth through some of their programs where they can provide a better rate for the representatives of PUP with enterprise rental so they can get a much better rate for the rental of vehicles that they use to transport some of their clients and customers to jobs throughout the region. So I believe it was a very productive meeting Friday morning and Friday afternoon. We will be reaching out to PUP in the very near future to talk about the program for the balance of this fiscal year and for the next fiscal year, including how best to handle the local match.
And so my understanding, based on those negotiations and conversations with PennDOT, that's reduced the cost of the program, but what will be SEPTA's aspect in reference to the local match?
We're currently working with PennDOT as to how best to provide that 15% match. The match has not been totally closed for this fiscal year, so we want, when we talk to PennDOT on Friday, we have some ideas as to how to meet that match requirement so that the project can be fully funded to match that state requirement.
Okay. And in order for that, once that amount is determined to be fully funded, and when we come up with the local match, that will provide opportunities for, I think, about 60 people?
60, but I think, with some of the efficiencies that they're looking at in terms of getting a better rental rate with enterprise, that hopefully that will be able to result in some additional opportunities.
Because one of the things that last year their request was looking at dollars from your $84 million budget. I think the request was about $750,000. I do understand that SEPTA, the dollars that the city provides is matched. However, my understanding is now that their request is $250,000, which is it's a major reduction from last year. And I would think out of an $84 million budget, even though there is a matching aspect to it, $250,000 would seem to be something that should be feasible, which allow up to 300 people per day to get transportation.
The match that the city provides is a statutory requirement in order to match the state matching funds that are provided for our operating budget. But we'd be more than happy to sit down with the representatives of PUP to talk about the program for the upcoming year.
Just to state for the record, I know that in years past, when there's been challenges in reference to understandings regarding transportation, I can reflect in Councilman Blackwell when she was having some challenges regarding the development of the Market Frankfurt L in West Philadelphia and the impact it had on the businesses on that commercial corridor. This body took steps to transfer those dollars from the public property budget that was going to be allocated to SEPTA into the city council budget as a way to move forward that conversation. I know we started this conversation last year. The amount that was requested was $750. It's now down to $250, and I think there's an opportunity to have that conversation, so those type of steps won't have to be taken going forward.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Agree, Councilman. Councilman Heenan. Oh, no problem.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you all for being here and coming from the City Council. And I had a few questions about your upgrade in technologies on the regional rail and your buses to improve the accountability and effectiveness of the riders when you went from the token to the card reading system. Could you just kind of give a little update on how that's going?
The progress of the project?
Yeah, the progress.
The city will definitely, transit will definitely be finished in 18. There's also a good chance of the railroad finishing in calendar year 18. If not, it'll fall over into early 19. And then really the last aspect is our CCT service, which we would be working to convert over as well.
And I'll have to look at your testimony, but I think, I just want to acknowledge and thank you for your commitment to the seniors and allowing for the senior passes and, the I think flexibility working with local and state offices to make
Right,
sure
so that
happens.
you could get the card through the legislative
Yeah,
offices.
I mean, that is,
There's been 68,000 of them through the legislative offices.
that's quite remarkable, right? When you think of the city of Philadelphia and you think downtown, you think that people, can afford and have the opportunity, but when the fact of the matter is, a lot of us live in middle neighborhoods where, I think rely on those passes and the ability to move around. So, I mean, I'd like to, my mother used to always say that, that the Teamsters move America, but SEPTA, you're moving people in the city of Philadelphia. And, I want to thank you for working with my office. We've
Sure.
really had a very willingness with you and your staff, even at a lower level, to deal with student dismissals, to deal with transit modals, and I think equally as important is working with Otis. And our representative on your board, Mike Carroll, is doing a fantastic job, and I am so glad that we as a city reconstructed, or reorganized, how we look at transit collectively as a whole, because it makes a difference. I have two major transit revitalization projects going on in the planning stage, and I'm not talking about building regional rail, capital investments or anything. I'm talking about working with Otis and planning on how to move people from regional rail or bus depots to our commercial corridors and into our inner neighborhoods. So that is a commitment I know for me in my office, and it seems to be a commitment with Otis and Mike and your office and SEPTA. So it's going to take a lot of it may take a few years to get moving, but I think we're in the right direction, and then I think that's the way we should be thinking. Not necessarily taking all the academia policy, white paper stuff that's been sitting around for a long time, but, we're 2018 and we got to be looking forward, while I-95 is going on, the construction, which seems like forever. All right. Maybe, rethinking how we utilize our public transportation, because I use 95 every day, just because I need to be flexible with moving around, and I'm on 95 for an hour every morning, and on the way back. So I just want to applaud your non-skepticism of City Council and our offices as we move forward. And thank you for partnering with the TWU, the building trades, and the city with the Hub of Hope. I think, really sets the bar of the commitment to how you feel about, Philadelphia. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Before I move on, we still have some members that want to ask questions. We are well behind in our schedule. The community college has been very patiently waiting there for quite a while, so if we could move on as quickly as possible, that would be great. Councilman Dom.
Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. I just want to mention that for some reason, every time when I'm ready to talk, that conversation comes out that we're way past our time.
Oh, sorry. A pure coincidence, Councilman. Pure coincidence, I guarantee it.
So I have a couple questions. This year, the city is contributing $84.8 million. Roughly, what did we contribute last year? Similar number?
What's the exact number? 82.
82. And on top of that, the city contributes 4.97 for the capital budget?
Right.
Was that similar to what we contributed last year also?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. And just for my own benefit, do you know what your fringe benefit costs are at SEPTA?
Low 60%.
60%. That includes pension liability, everything?
Yes.
Low 60%, okay. And do you know what the ridership has been this 17 on the L from 69th Street to Bridge and Pratt, roughly? Compared to last year, I'm assuming the ridership is up, but I'm just curious what the numbers are.
It's actually pretty level right now.
Level. Because what I see as an opportunity is for us to develop along that L. That L is probably the best method of transportation, considering what's going on in the streets. We keep hearing about traffic studies.
Absolutely. I agree. I strongly agree with you on that.
So the more we can develop around the L stops and make those stops even more attractive, it'll help all the neighborhoods, because that is the best way to really get around the city.
And we're actually looking at a project to go to 8-car trains. Actually, the city has been wanting to do this forever. I think they figured it out about 10 years after they built the L. But you're very right. I mean, it's a workhorse. It's a great asset.
Right.
To move you across the city the way it does is efficiently. But the things that we're concerned is that we've had a 41% ridership increase since 1998, or really in 20 years. And we as more and more development comes, and you look at Schuylkill Yards and other things that are projected, we're getting a little concerned that we might limit the amount of development and growth that could happen in this city. So we are really starting to look seriously at relook at this issue of going to 8-car trains.
And are the platforms capable to handle 8-car trains?
Some are, some aren't. When I say the city recognized it, as they before it came to SEPTA, as they did replace things or put like the elevated underground in West Philadelphia, many of them are not quite half are the right length, but obviously half would still have to be extended. When we did the Market L project, we planned ahead to make them to be easy to extend.
Right.
So it's not a terribly expensive project, but it can give you a 33% increase in capacity, which is really,
It's great.
good.
Yeah. And are we doing more and more to make all these subway L stops more attractive, nicer, safer, secure?
They have, in fact, just about every station has been worked on now on the L, other than, and a kind of an indicator of this is that there's only 3 station stops left to go before the entire line is ADA accessible. So we've spent a lot on the L stations.
And are there any opportunities on any of our L station stops to have retail there? So someone who's waiting for a train's coming in 5 minutes, they grab a coffee or tea or whatever.
That was in place years ago. It kind of dropped away. But I think that the opportunities are starting to become available, yes.
And I'm bringing this up because, and I know that Mike Carroll knows what I'm going to say because I've said this before, but when you look at what's going on in the Philadelphia in general, with Uber and Lyft, 25% of our purchases over the internet, all the delivery trucks, 9% of our food purchases are now being delivered, expected to go to 18% in the next 3 years. Food purchases, bigger trucks.
Right.
The congestion is just going to get worse.
It's going to get, yeah, I agree.
And I know that we're talking about a traffic study. We hope to have it completed, but this is almost at a crisis stage. And I think we should, my opinion, just my opinion, is that we should look at certain streets in Center City and suspend on-street parking, get rid of it. We have bike lanes now. You can't move. You can't move in certain streets right now. On Saturday, it took me 40 minutes to go from 20th and Chestnut to 15th and Walnut. 40 minutes. We can't have on-street parking. Maybe have those people park in the garages. We'll still get the revenue because the taxes will be taxed on the garage. I know we talked about this, Mike. I just want to make sure that this is front and center because it's a complaint from everybody right now. Everyone's complaining about traffic, and we should do a quick study, at least in Center City. What can we do about on-street parking that, think about this. 10 years ago, 1 out of 12 leases in the city of Philadelphia were restaurants. Everything else was retail. Today, last year, 1 out of 4 are restaurants. And retail is dying to a degree because people don't go into stores anymore. So the fact that all these retailers need the on-street parking, I don't believe is as important as being able to have their customers get to their stores, because people won't even come into the city if it's this clogged. So this is kind of a combination of encouraging the L usage, because that doesn't rely on any streets, and number 2, look immediately at suspending certain sections of the city of this on-street parking to free it up. We have bike lanes, we have Uber, we have Lyft, we have all kinds of trucks delivering, and it's only going to get bigger. If you're 21 to 35, you're ordering most of your things over the internet, and even older people. I know that Councilman Jones probably orders over the internet. So I just want us to really focus on that, because we're going to sit here in 2 years and say this is a disaster unless we handle it.
I appreciate the urgency. So we will be working on that, working closely with you and the other council folks.
But think about that on-street parking, because I think we talked about this before. We need a study that shows if we suspend certain streets of on-street parking and those cars go into certain lots, will the revenue be similar? It might even be better for the city, because we're going to get 22 or 22.5% tax versus what we're getting from the meter income. It might be actually better for us than what we're doing now, and it'll dramatically free up traffic flow.
It's a good question, so we will look at that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Gim.
Very much, Mr. Chair. So I just want to clarify about where we left off the last time. I was trying to get clarity about where the transfer points are, so that people who are using the SEPTA key are aware of when they transfer that they're actually using, that it says that they're at a particular transfer point. And I was asking a question about transparency with the SEPTA key and the fee that is paid. So does SEPTA, does a user have an ability at the point of usage to know what the fee was paid, how many rides are remaining, the balance on the card?
Okay. You want to come back, Rich? explain the transfer.
And if we could just keep it focused in on that.
Sure.
Because I want to respect my colleagues' time.
On transfers, I know a question came up at our public hearing earlier in the week about transparency of transfer locations, and a request was to have that information posted on our web. That's something that we will be looking to add to our website. That information isn't currently there, so we will look to include on the web, on schedules, and at stations.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. And then in terms of transparency around so just for clarity, right now, the public doesn't know where they can transfer. It's not publicly known right now, and you're changing that.
You have to hand you have to do the
You have to hand it.
You have to have physically.
Is that the discretion of the driver, or the driver will inform you?
No, there are certain locations where you can have a transfer. That information just isn't published on the web, which, we're happy to add that information on the web.
Right, so just right now, the public, though, is not aware.
Correct, the information
Okay.
isn't on the web.
But that will change?
Yes.
We will
Okay,
add that, yes.
Thank you. And so now we're back to transparency about whether a user of the SEPTA key can find out what's the fee that's paid, whether it was a transfer deduction or a full fare deduction, the ride's remaining card balance.
For the key card, you can go to a kiosk at any of the stations, a bus loop, or you can call customer service or go online to get that information. Not this year, but last year as part of our hearing process, somewhat of a mixed reaction that we got from some of our customers in terms of information that would be available right on the screen. And some of our customers did not want that information and balance information right on the screen for privacy reasons. So at this point, that information is not on the keypad screens as you tap your card.
Okay, and then is that like a decision that was made just because some people said it? Like, how do you balance out some people's need to know how much they're spending versus some people who want to say, personally, I'd like to keep it private?
It is definitely a balancing issue, and one of the reasons that we tried to have that information available so that if you go to a kiosk at the station, you can have that information available there by tapping your card.
Okay. Well, maybe we can continue a little bit of that, because I know that there are some people who've been asking our office and have been concerned about not knowing how much is spent on the key, and, it's very confusing and all of that. But I would like to follow up, and I appreciate that very much. I had an additional question. We were talking a little bit about youth-serving organizations and nonprofits that serve large numbers of youth, and I wanted to know if you could help me think about how to walk through what an organization might do, for example, once we switch over to the SEPTA key. So recently in City Hall, I had a large town hall. It was a student town hall to talk about the impacts and the things that they want to see in a school district budget. We had more than 100 students come. I feel very strongly about making sure that I compensate them for their transportation here and back home. Of course, I can buy single fare tokens and just, hand everybody 2 tokens to get back to where they need to go. Under the SEPTA key, though, I would have to buy 100 $2.50 SEPTA keys, so that would be $250, and then I would have to add on the fare.
We're currently working on what we call our partner program, and have a partner portal where those agencies currently right now have 2 different fare options: to buy a 2-trip ticket or to buy a 1-day pass. One of the things that we heard from those agencies is we don't always need a 2-trip product. So we were working on a product where you can have a 1-trip product. We've had outreach with a number of different agencies, and we have a list of 550 agencies that we're working with. When we had the hearing on March 14th here at Council Chambers, we made some very good connections with some agencies. One of the agencies was Turning Points for Children. They have given us information, so we are working with some different agencies. It was in the most recent United Way brochure in terms of the SEPTA Key program.
But for clarity, again, I would still have to pay $250 up front to buy everybody a SEPTA Key before I even added in the fare. Is that correct?
You would just pay what for the number of cards. It's called disposable media, but whatever fares that you want, if you want, 5 cards, 10 cards, whatever you choose to purchase, that's what we would work with you on.
But I have to pay for the key. As opposed to, like, in the past, I would just pay for a one-way fare this way and a one-way fare that way. Once the SEPTA Key goes into place, I have to pay for the key, is that accurate? And then I would have to add a fare on top of the key?
No, it's not a key card, it's a different fare product.
Okay.
It's looks more like a paper product.
Got it. And that will go into, that is already in effect now?
We've already have agreements in place with, I think, about 10 to 15 agencies. We're just in the process of launching
And
it.
would you mind, not now, but if you could work with our office and maybe talk with some of our youth organizing groups, because I think they do need a lot of clarity about this, because I think they're very confused. They think they have to pay like a $5 card. So, for example, like a single town hall would cost me $500.
No.
So I just want to make clear that they're clear with you. But if we could work together on
sure.
that, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'd be
Thank you,
happy.
Councilman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to be very brief because I'm not going to keep Lynette Brown-So waiting another minute.
Yeah, remember, we gave her all those
Not
awards. She,
another minute.
we have to be nice to her.
So what I want to talk about and elaborate on with Councilman Dom is this whole SEPTA's role in planning traffic studies. It's not just Center City. I have East Falls, Roxborough, Manayunk that also are in some senses overdeveloped and not planned for enough by way of mass intermodal transportation. One of the aspects of that is parking. And we want you to be engaged in how we can work with developers who want to build these multi-unit structures, but don't have the adequate parking. And one of the options, along with working with the Planning Commission, is remote parking with an Uber twist. So I'm always reminded of the nurse working the third shift who comes home at 2 in the morning and has to park 4 blocks from her house. The SEPTA option isn't as convenient for her, but your parking lots could be used in conjunction with a commitment from a developer to pay for the Uber fare between those kinds of short puddle jumps, I would, from a parking spot to a house. Have you engaged with the Planning Commission and or other entities to start to look at that kind of planning?
Councilman, I'm going to try and give you a little perspective on that. We haven't looked at that specific type of idea. I think, though, in the context of the bus system network planning, the schedule planning, the stop planning, in addition to the work that we're looking at with how we utilize the space that SEPTA has, all of those questions need to be on the table. So bus service isn't always going to be the best option for people to get around, especially in the off hours and especially in locations where you don't have, the ridership that you want to see get on and off a bus.
I would argue that with proper planning and parking, you increase ridership.
Yes.
So if at 63rd and Market, we create a parking node that connects to your L, that connects maybe to a Uber service or whatever, you're going to have more people interested in using that mode of transportation than ever before.
So the two things, and I think you're onto this, are how do you have enough activity at one space or one place so that the people are there, they're ready to get on the train, they're ready to get on the L, they're ready to get on the bus, and then how do you feed people to that location? I think it's a mix of things. So Uber and Lyft may be part of that mix. And so those agreements need to be worked out. We're not far enough along to say that, we've talked to developers, but what we're trying to think about is what are the partnerships that SEPTA can kind of catalyze, can stimulate in order to make those things happen. So I think that's down the road, but it's early days as far as that's going.
I mean, even if we work with car share and Indigo bike share to make sure that mandatory are those kinds of options so I can get to the node and get from the node at night. And if we just spend a little time thinking about it, it's in your interest as well. Because what SEPTA gets to do is create new riderships out of convenience. And it's something we want to do. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Dom.
Just two quick comments or questions or whatever, but to follow up on Councilman Jones, do we have SEPTA stops that are hooked into the bike share? So you pick up a bike right from the SEPTA stop?
Absolutely. And then we've been doing a lot of things, like in South Philadelphia, we have the mezzanines there. We've put bike racks down in the concourse to make that better use of that space. So a lot of connections with Bicycle Network and also the city's Indigo.
All right, let me ask you another question. We as a city are trying to sell right now 46th and Market. There's a subway stop there, isn't there?
Yes.
So as we are all owners of that property, I want to make sure that, number one, I don't know if we did it, but we should have done it, made sure that that stop is in impeccable condition, number one. Number two, do whatever we can to make that even a prototype of what we want a stop to look like in the future, because whatever we do there enhances the value of the sale of 46th and Market.
Right.
So even if we make it the 21st century subway, whatever it is, or 22nd century, whatever we want to do, we should do it there because it'll enhance the saleability of 46th and Market.
It was rebuilt less than 10 years
Right.
ago and is in very good condition.
And do we have any services there, like we talked about, like for people who are waiting for a subway, the L? Are there a coffee? Is there anything? I'm looking for something out of the box,
Amenities,
unique.
yeah.
Amenities that makes this a special location.
Currently, it's not really one of the highest ridership locations, but that does, I think that we can look to do things at the higher ridership. Obviously, vendors, people want to go to the highest ridership spots first, and I think they'll be the ones that'll go, but
Right.
I agree with you.
But I'm looking at it from a different perspective. And I'm not saying necessarily maybe the city partners with you. We have a much bigger asset at stake here, which is 46th and Market. And so if we can invest even a couple $100,000 to make that stop so much better in a prototype, we're going to pick it up on the value of the sale of 46th and Market when a buyer looks at that whole area.
We built retail space in potential at some of the stops, but 2008 came. That I just don't remember off the top of my head whether 46th and Market does, but I know other stops in West Philadelphia on the L. We did build in the ability to put vendors right in the station down at the ground.
But when we as a city went to Market, 46th and Market, did we sit down with you and say, how do we do this together? How do we make this asset more valuable? And what can we do in the neighborhood to make 46th and Market receive a higher price?
Yeah, that's good ideas. I think we should do that. It'll involve more than just the Office of Transportation, so we'll need to coordinate with Commerce on that and planning, but that makes
Because it helps
sense.
us in the long run. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Reynolds Brown. Thank you, Councilman. Yeah.
The question raised by Councilman Dom, as an FYI, Della Clark, who sits right there at 45th and Market Street, does have a 8-year plan about development because she incubates small businesses there in a huge way and has been there now for over 2 decades. So I do know, as you think about whatever it is you want to do, she's already in the pipeline with Commerce about making that corridor exactly the way Councilman Don has described it. You should be aware of that. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. No other questions? Let me just say, as a longtime SEPTA ride, yeah, I know, it's already afternoon. You had enough, right? But it goes back to PTC. I think you're all doing a great job, and thank you for everything you do. Okay? Thank you.
I'm 5 pounds lighter.